It began on a quiet Friday evening, the kind of evening when the sky dims slowly, giving people plenty of time to settle into the softness of twilight. For most, it was just another end to just another week. But for Emily Carter, that night would carry the kind of memories that refuse to fade, no matter how many years try to bury them beneath the weight of ordinary days. Emily had spent the past few months drifting through life like a ghost in her own home. Work, sleep, repeat. That was the rhythm she'd fallen into after her breakup with Daniel, a breakup she still hadn't fully accepted. She hated that she couldn't let go, hated that every small detail reminded her of him. The crack in the kitchen tile he promised to fix, the coffee mug he once chipped after laughing too hard, the blanket they bought together on a rainy night in December. Everything felt drenched in the past. She was suffocating herself with memories. When her best friend, Nora, invited her to a night out at the old lighthouse on Crescent Bay, a tradition they had abandoned years ago, Emily almost declined. She wanted to say no, wanted to retreat back into isolation. But something, maybe the need to breathe again or the simple fear of staying trapped in her routine, made her say yes. By the time they reached Crescent Bay, the sun had dipped below the horizon, painting the sea in deep shades of blue and violet. The lighthouse stood tall at the edge of the cliff, weathered by time but still stubbornly proud. Its lantern had not worked in years, but the building itself had never lost its charm. It was the perfect place to escape the world for a while. Nora carried 2 blankets and a thermos of something that smelled sweet and warm. Emily carried a lantern and a hesitant hope that maybe tonight would feel different from the others. Maybe tonight she would finally feel like herself again. They sat near the railing, the ocean stretching endlessly below them, waves breaking against the rocks with a rhythm almost soothing. Nora talked about her plans, her photography project, the road trip she wanted to take, the strange idea she had about writing short stories based on strangers' faces. Emily listened, smiling now and then, letting herself be pulled into the warmth of her friend's energy. It all felt peaceful, almost too peaceful. And then, the night shifted. It started with a distant sound, low, unfamiliar, like something heavy being dragged across the rocks far below. Emily paused mid-sentence, lifting her head. The wind wasn't strong, and the beach was usually silent after dark. She exchanged a glance with Nora, who frowned. "You heard that too, right?" Emily whispered. Nora nodded, gripping her thermos a little tighter. They both stood and walked closer to the railing. The darkness below was thick, making the rocks nearly impossible to see. Only the moonlight broke through, shimmering faintly across the water. Another sound came, this time clearer. A voice. A man's voice. Weak, strained. "Help someone please." Emily felt her chest tighten. The voice sounded desperate, swallowed by the roar of the waves. She turned to Nora. "We need to check." Nora hesitated. It's dangerous. It could be someone messing with us. Or someone dying," Emily said firmly. The decision took only seconds. Emily grabbed the lantern and raced down the narrow path that led toward the rocks. Nora followed reluctantly, muttering that the universe had a cruel sense of timing. The closer they got to the shore, the stronger the waves sounded, crashing violently against the stone. The path was slippery, littered with sand and fragments of shells. But the voice grew louder, guiding them like a thread through the darkness. When they reached the bottom, Emily lifted the lantern. There, wedged between 2 jagged rocks, was a man. His clothes were torn, soaked with seawater, and his left leg was trapped beneath a fallen beam, one that looked like it might have come from a small boat. His face was pale, scratched by the rough stone around him, and he seemed only half conscious. "Oh my God," Nora breathed. Emily rushed forward. "Don't move. We're going to get you out." The man's eyes flicked open, dazed but relieved. "I didn't think anyone would hear me." "What happened?" Emily asked, kneeling beside him as she assessed the trap leg. "My boat hit the rocks," he murmured. "Engine failed. I jumped before it sank, but the tide pulled me in." Nora scanned the water nervously. "We need to call for help." "I don't have my phone," Emily said, cursing herself. "I do," but Nora lifted it with an expression that said everything. The screen was cracked, the device dead. Emily inhaled sharply. The tide was rising, fast. If they didn't act soon, the water would swallow this part of the shore. "We don't have time to wait," she said. "Help me lift." Nora stared at her as if she'd lost her mind. That beam looks like it weighs a ton." "Then let's make it weigh less," Emily insisted. Find a piece of driftwood we can use for leverage. Maybe it was adrenaline or the strange strength that comes from knowing someone else's life depends on you. But Emily moved quickly. She wedged the lantern between the rocks for light, then grabbed the thickest piece of driftwood she could find. Nora joined her a moment later, breathless. Together they positioned the wood under the beam, pushing with everything they had. The beam didn't budge at first. The man groaned in pain. Emily felt the burn in her muscles, felt the sting of fear in her chest. She pushed harder, gritting her teeth. Nora did the same. And finally, the beam shifted, just enough for the man to pull his leg free. Emily collapsed backward, panting. Nora let out a shaky laugh, equal parts terrified and relieved. Okay, Emily said between breaths, we need to get you up the path. The climb back was brutal. The man, whose name they learned was Liam, limped badly, leaning heavily on Emily's shoulder. Every few steps he winced, but he kept moving. Nora walked beside them, shining the lantern over the steep, uneven steps. When they finally reached the top, the wind hit them in a sharp gust. Liam collapsed onto the ground, exhausted. You saved my life, he said quietly, looking at Emily with a gratitude that made her chest feel strangely warm. Anyone would have done it, she replied, brushing a loose strand of hair from her face. Not anyone, he corrected. Most people would have stayed up there listening, wondering. The weight of his words settled into the silent night. Nora placed a blanket around Liam's shoulders, and Emily poured him some of the warm drink from a thermos. As he sipped it, colors slowly returned to his face. For a few minutes they just sat together, all three staring at the endless sea. The night no longer felt quiet in a peaceful way. It felt alive, humming with the strange electricity of shared danger and unlikely connection. You know, Nora said suddenly, we rescue one guy and suddenly the night feels like a movie. Liam smiled weakly. Then I hope it has a good ending. They waited together for nearly half an hour before they finally spotted the lights of the local Coast Guard approaching from a distant road. Nora's phone had revived long enough to send a text. When the officers arrived, they checked Liam's injuries and prepared to take him to the hospital. Before they left, Liam reached for Emily's hand. If you ever find your way to Crescent Hospital, he said softly, I'd like to thank you properly. Emily felt something flicker inside her, not the painful stab of old love, but a gentler spark, something she hadn't felt in a long time. Maybe I will, she replied. He smiled, that tired but sincere smile. I hope so. When the ambulance drove off, the beach fell quiet again. Nora nudged Emily with her shoulder. An unforgettable night, huh? Emily looked at the dark water, the broken beam still glistening with salt. She thought of how close Liam had been to disappearing forever. She thought of her own life, how she'd been drifting without direction, trapped by memories she couldn't let go of. And she realized something important. Sometimes life waits for the moment you're least prepared, and then shows you why you still matter. Yes, she whispered. Unforgettable. But the night wasn't finished with her yet. As they packed up the blankets, Emily noticed something half buried in the sand near the cliff's edge. A small waterproof pouch. She picked it up, confused. Inside was Liam's wallet, and a folded letter addressed simply to the one who finds this. Nora leaned in. Do we open it? Emily hesitated. The envelope was sealed but worn by the sea. Something about it felt heavy, personal. But what if it was important? With careful fingers, she opened it. The letter inside was written in shaky handwriting. If you're reading this, it means my boat didn't make it back. I didn't want to leave without saying what matters. Emily's breath caught. She read on. I came to Crescent Bay to say goodbye, not to life, but to the regrets I've carried for too long. I've run from everything. My family, my mistakes, myself. If this letter reaches anyone, I hope you understand this truth. It's never too late to start over, unless we choose to believe it is. There was more, a whole page filled with confessions, doubts, and hopes. A man trying to find his way back after losing too much. A man who hadn't planned to die, but had planned to change. Emily folded the letter slowly, feeling a strange aching in her chest. Nora said softly, he wrote that before he crashed. I know. And Hez alive because of you. Emily wiped her eyes discreetly. Maybe the universe is done giving me endings. Maybe it's finally giving me beginnings. They left the lighthouse in silence, Not the empty silence of before, but a peaceful one. The night felt fuller, richer, almost sacred. When Emily got home, she placed the letter on her table and stared at it for a long while. Liam had gone to Crescent Bay to face his past. She had gone there trying to escape hers. Somehow, their broken paths had crossed, and in doing so, had given each of them something neither expected. A reason to look forward again. The next morning, Emily woke with a calm she hadn't felt in months. And before doubt could take root, she grabbed her keys, slipped the letter into her pocket, and drove toward Crescent Hospital. For once, she wasn't thinking of the past. She was thinking of the man she'd found between the rocks, and the night that had changed everything. The night she knew she would never forget. The hospital smelled faintly of disinfectant and something sterile, something safe. Emily walked through the sliding doors with a nervousness she couldn't hide, her fingers curled around the folded letter in her pocket like it was a compass guiding her forward. She felt ridiculous for how fast her heart beat, for how many times she rehearsed simple greetings in her head. "Hi, how are you feeling?" Too plain. "Hi, I found your letter." Too intimate. "Hi, you almost died last night." Definitely not. The receptionist directed her to room 214 with a warm smile, but Emily's palms grew damp as she approached the door. She hesitated only a moment before knocking softly. "Come in," a familiar voice answered, weaker than she remembered but unmistakable. She pushed the door open. Liam was sitting upright in the bed, a bandage wrapped around his head and his left leg supported by a brace. His face brightened the moment he recognized her. "You came," he said, the words filled with genuine relief. Emily felt her breath soften. "Of course I did." He motioned toward the chair beside him. She took it, feeling strangely shy, as though they hadn't survived a life-threatening situation together just hours before. "How are you feeling?" she asked. "Sore," he admitted. "Alive. Thanks to you." "You don't need to thank me again." "I do." Liam paused, searching for the right words. People pass each other every day, and most never stop. You stopped. Emily didn't know how to respond to that, so instead she pulled the small waterproof pouch from her bag. "By the way, we found this at the lighthouse." She placed it on his lap. "I figured it was yours." Liam blinked, surprised. When he unzipped it and saw the letter inside, his entire expression changed. Something like fear, or vulnerability, flickered across his face. "You read it?" he asked, not accusingly, just softly. Emily hesitated. "Some of it. I didn't want to invade your privacy, but it felt important." He let out a long breath. Not angry, relieved. "It's okay," he said. "Honestly, maybe you were meant to find it." He rested a hand over the folded page. "I wrote that when I didn't know where I was going anymore. I wasn't planning anything stupid," he clarified quickly. "I just needed to let go of things before they drown me." Emily smiled sadly. "I understand that more than you think." Liam looked at her then, really looked, and she felt the weight of his attention in a way she hadn't felt in months. "Yeah," he murmured, "I think you do." A gentle knock broke the moment. A nurse entered to check Liam's vitals, and Emily moved aside. When the nurse left, Liam shifted slightly, wincing. "So," he said, trying to lighten the air, "any chance you'd let me take you for coffee after they fix this leg?" Emily laughed. "You're planning dates before you can even walk? Just showing ambition." She shook her head. "Let's start with you getting discharged." "Fair enough." Silence settled between them, but it wasn't uncomfortable, more like both were thinking the same thing but too cautious to speak it aloud. Eventually, Emily stood. "I should let you rest." Liam looked disappointed, but he nodded. "Will you come back?" Emily swallowed. "Yes. I will." As she turned to leave, his voice stopped her. "Emily." She looked over her shoulder. "Last night you saved more than my life." Something warm and unfamiliar filled her chest. She didn't trust herself to answer, so she simply smiled and slipped out the door. Outside the hospital, the air felt crisp, almost new. Emily walked slowly, feeling the quiet shift inside her, something opening, something healing. For the first time in so long, she wasn't thinking about Daniel or the heartbreak that had weighed her down. She wasn't thinking about the past at all. She was thinking about a man she'd met under the worst circumstances imaginable. A man who wrote letters to the universe because he didn't know who else to talk to. A man who looked at her like she was sunlight after a storm. She stopped, looking back at the hospital windows glowing softly against the morning sky. Nora's words echoed in her mind. An unforgettable night, huh? Emily exhaled, a faint smile touching her lips. No, she whispered into the breeze. It's becoming an unforgettable beginning that the afternoon sun was sinking when Emily drove Liam back to Crescent Bay. His crutches rested behind the seat, and the ocean stretched wide before them, calm and golden. Emily parked near the lighthouse, the place where everything had begun. You sure about this? Liam asked quietly. She nodded. I think we both need it. They walked to the cliff's edge, the wind brushing against them. Liam stared down at the rocks far below, where Head nearly lost his life. This time, he didn't feel fear, only gratitude. I thought coming back here would hurt, he said. But it doesn't. Not anymore. Emily smiled softly. Maybe because you're not the same person who was here that night. He glanced at her. Neither are you. Silence settled, gentle, not heavy. The sky glowed like fading fire, and for a moment it felt like the world was holding its breath. Emily, he said finally, I don't want to rush anything. But I want you to know I want to live again. I want to try. And I want you to be part of that, if you're willing. Her heart tightened, warm and steady. That night changed me too, she said. I was lost. But meeting you it felt like waking up. He reached for her hand. She didn't hesitate. Their fingers intertwined naturally, as if they'd been waiting for this moment all along. If this is too soon, he began. It's not, she whispered. He leaned in, and their kiss was soft, unsure for only a heartbeat, then certain. A quiet promise. When they pulled away, the lighthouse behind them blinked its final light of the evening. So what now? Emily asked. Liam smiled. Now we start something new. Hand in hand, they walked back up the path as twilight settled around them. The night that once nearly ended everything had become the night that began something neither of them expected. An unforgettable night, and an unforgettable beginning. This is the end of my story. Stay with me, subscribe, and see you again.